My entire family bilayed on my wedding to sip cocktails on a Maui beach. So I locked their credit cards, severed ties with the family business, and delivered a 5-word message. When my dad showed up, I told him to sort it out himself. Let me backtrack. I was in a small dressing room at our wedding venue, a modest coastal lodge, simple but serene, adjusting my tie when my mom's text came through. Don't expect us to show best wishes. No punctuation, no explanation, just that. I stared at my phone, thinking it was a mistake. I double-checked the sender as if I didn't know her number by heart. I even restarted my phone, hoping I'd misread it. But no, that was it. Meanwhile, Elena was getting ready down the hall, unaware that I was mentally saying goodbye to the family who raised me. She didn't know the full story. She thought they'd just be late. I never told her how they really felt about her. When we got engaged, my mom called her gritty, and my dad said she wasn't a smart match. I didn't know people still spoke like that outside of corporate mergers or arranged marriages. They disapproved of her background. Her family wasn't wealthy, her dad was a truck driver, her mom worked retail, and she came from a small town. They put on smiles in public but sneered in private, and I naively thought they'd warm up to her. They didn't. As the ceremony started, I kept glancing at the door. The seats reserved for my family stayed empty, every single one. Not even a text from my sister, who once said I was her lifeline during her divorce. She couldn't even bother with an excuse. But Elena, God, she was radiant. She glowed like she had everything figured out. I focused on her and refused to let them ruin the moment, at least not outwardly. We said our vows, we kissed, the crowd cheered. The reception was small but joyful. Her family danced all night. Our college friends raised glasses of cheap wine and shared goofy stories. No one asked about my family's absence. Maybe they sensed something was off. I stepped outside to grab a drink from the cooler and catch my breath. That's when I saw it, a post that hit harder than any words my family ever spoke. My cousin, who never grasped how privacy settings work, shared a photo of them all on a private Maui beach. Waves crashing, sunglasses on, flowy dresses and open shirts. My parents, my sister and her husband, 2 aunts, even my dad's business partner, who isn't even family, grinning, arms around each other, tanned and carefree. It looked like a magazine ad. The caption read, "Finally united. Love triumphs, family always." They didn't just skip my wedding. They orchestrated their own event, a family gathering without me, timed perfectly for my wedding day, and posted it like a deliberate jab. I went back inside, kissed Elena, and danced until midnight. Then I went quiet. I showed up at the office the next day like nothing happened. "Morning," the receptionist said. I smiled and walked straight to my office. My name was still on the company charter. I still held the admin keys. I controlled the corporate cards, shared accounts, and assets I'd helped build alongside my dad from scratch. I filed the paperwork to remove myself from the business, froze all family-linked expense accounts, phones, gas, flights, hotels, and timed it to hit them midweek, right as their trip was winding down. Their group chat exploded like a siren. My dad texted first, then my sister, then the calls started. I ignored them all. I was on the couch with Elena, eating leftover cake, when I finally replied. Perfect timing. Then I shut off my phone and poured some wine. There was nothing left to say. Silence was enough to unravel them. I didn't answer a single call after the photo, the texts, the wedding, or after I froze the accounts and stepped away from the business we'd built over a decade. No one addressed the growing pile of frantic messages in my inbox, not even when my sister asked if I'd lost my mind. I just watched from a distance as the cracks began to show. Elena noticed I was different but didn't pry. She knew if I wasn't talking, it wasn't time yet. We were settling into married life, small routines, morning coffee, cooking dinner together. She started a freelance gig, bringing a spark to our home I didn't know I'd been missing. We were happy, exhausted, but happy. Then came the knock. It was overcast, and I was in the kitchen in a t-shirt and boxers, sipping coffee when the pounding started, sharp like someone wanted to break the door down. I knew who it was. I opened the door, and there was my dad, red-faced, in his usual overstarched shirt and designer pants, like dressing for business gave him authority. His Maui tan still lingered, like a taunt. He didn't ask to come in or check on me. He just launched into it, yelling about how I'd humiliated him, crippled the family, and stranded them by freezing the accounts mid-trip, forcing them to use personal credit cards. He said my sister and her husband had just put money down on a second home, counting on the cash flow I'd cut off. He claimed I had no right, that I'd thrown a wrecking ball at everything. I stood there, sipping coffee. When he paused to catch his breath, I said calmly, I gave you every chance. You chose. Something shifted in him. His anger turned sour. He started calling me irrational, said I was blowing one event out of proportion, as if missing my wedding was a minor disagreement. He kept framing it as a difference of perspective, like their actions had no weight. He said I owed him because he built the company from nothing, gave me the tools to succeed, and I was nothing without him. That's when I realized we'd never see eye to eye. I told him the changes were final. The holding company now owned my shares, and no decisions would be reversed without payment. If they wanted the business, they could buy it back at market value, cash up front. The cards weren't coming back, the travel accounts and company car leases were done. When he asked what I expected them to do, I said, "Figure it out." Then I closed the door. He stayed out there, banging, shouting my name, throwing threats I'd heard before. I didn't open it. I sat down, finished my coffee, and flipped through our wedding photos. Not one included my family, but every shot radiated joy. That afternoon, I called my lawyer and secured the rest of my financial assets, cutting off all shared access, removing family from my personal accounts, and canceling auto pay for my sister's second home. She'd used my name to lock in the rate. Not anymore. They'd been living off me for years without acknowledging it, coasting on trips, investments, and bailouts I'd quietly facilitated while they posed on beaches, muttering that my wife wasn't our kind. Now the machine was grinding to a halt, and they could feel it slowing. It started small, payment hiccups. The company car lease failed first. The dealership called my personal number out of habit. Then a vendor flagged an unpaid invoice, emailing the company account I still quietly monitored. The office building sent a late rent notice. I didn't say a word, I just watched. They were scrambling, evident in the group chat. My sister begged someone to cover the lake house's electric bill. My dad offered vague promises. My aunt said her card was declined while booking a Scottsdale trip. My cousin asked if the company still covered his insurance. No one got real answers, and still, not one apology. Instead, they acted like victims, as if I'd vanished for no reason, ignoring that I'd been the one managing the tax shelters, trusts, and expense pipelines they never bothered to understand. They just used the cards, signed my paperwork, and assumed the money was endless. Then the mortgage issue hit. My sister and her husband had bought a big suburban house, perfect lawn, probably 3 bathrooms. I'd quietly co-signed a year ago when we were still talking. She never asked directly, just complained about not qualifying, and I stepped in because it felt right. With the accounts frozen and her income under review, the bank flagged the deal. The terms fell apart. They couldn't meet the new deposit deadline. I got the email since my name was still on the contract until I had it removed. The loan officer asked if I'd still back the property. I said no, not anymore. My sister called, first time since before the wedding. No congratulations, no apology, just, "You can't do this to us." Us. I let it ring and blocked her number. That night, Alina and I ate dinner on the couch, watching reruns with her head on my shoulder. She still didn't know everything, and I didn't think she needed to. What mattered was we were solid, building something real. Our old accountant, a straight shooter I respected, reached out. He said the quarterly reports were a mess and asked if I'd really cut all access. I confirmed. He paused, then said, "I wondered when you'd stop carrying them." It stuck with me because he was right. I'd been propping them up for years, quietly, without bitterness, until they made it impossible to ignore the truth. Now I was letting go. The silence shifted into something else. No apologies, just hushed calculations behind closed doors. They were trying to regain control without facing reality. Typical. I was working late from home, finalizing documents for a startup I'd quietly invested in months earlier, one I never told my dad about. It was the first time I felt genuinely excited about a new path. My phone pinged with an email from an unfamiliar name, subject. "Request for private discussion, Ray. Family matters." It was one of my dad's old business associates, a guy I'd met once at a board meeting when I was 22. A professional fixer. He wrote some slick line about meeting for coffee to discuss next steps, even tossing in, "There's still a way to preserve a legacy without sacrificing personal values." I laughed out loud and didn't reply. 2 days later, another email arrived from a law firm with a PDF titled Proposal for Partnership Reintegration and Corporate Stability. Their words, not mine. It offered to bring me back as a strategic consultant with a fat salary, restored shares, and a public announcement of renewed collaboration. I scrolled, half bored, until the last line, buried at the bottom. Reinstatement contingent on realignment of personal relationships and resolution of conflicts with brand identity or partner trust. It didn't name Alina, but it didn't have to. They wanted me back, but only if I ditched the woman who stood by me when they all bilayed. I shut the laptop without responding. The next night, Alina and I were walking home from dinner, laughing about some guy at the restaurant loudly pitching a podcast no one cared about. We turned onto our street and stopped cold. My mom was outside our building, no umbrella, no bag, like she'd been standing there for hours. Her hair was perfect, her makeup carefully understated, like she meant to look raw but not by accident. I hadn't seen her in a year. She didn't say hello, just looked at me, then Alina, then back at me. "I came alone," she said. "Your dad doesn't know I'm here." I stayed silent. She said she wanted to fix things, that it had gone too far, that the business was crumbling and no one was talking. "It's time someone acted like an adult," she said. I replied, "You didn't come to fix anything. You came to bargain." Then she said it quietly, rehearsed. "I think you know deep down she doesn't fit the future we built." It was so calm it hit harder than if she'd shouted. Alina didn't speak. She didn't need to. I stepped forward, looked my mom in the eyes, and said, "You built that future without me the second you got on that plane to Maui." Then I took Alina's hand, walked past her, and didn't look back. At 1:30 a.m., another email came from the law firm. Subject: urgent, intent to sue for breach of fiduciary duty. I wasn't angry or surprised, just tired. The thick, cream-colored legal packet arrived days later, my name in bold, accusing me of sabotaging the business, disrupting operations, damaging reputation, and misusing shared assets. It was nonsense, but polished nonsense. I handed it to my lawyer, Isabel, who didn't blink. After skimming the first page, she said, "They're trying to trap you before they implode." I nodded. "Then let them implode." She started crafting a counter. They forgot that while they were flying first class and schmoozing clients, I was keeping the books clean. I had everything: expense reports, internal emails, proxy notes, even board meeting recordings. I had proof of every task they dumped on me because they couldn't be bothered. No shouting or threats needed. Collapse doesn't always come from a blaze. Sometimes it's a slow leak. I made one call to Raphael, our logistics partner I'd known for years. Over beers once, we'd bonded. I told him off the record to hold off on the next few bulk shipments. Things were unstable. He didn't ask questions, just said, "Got it." Then I contacted the building owner for our headquarters, where I still had partial signatory rights on the lease. I didn't threaten, just said I'd no longer personally guarantee rent and hinted at financial trouble ahead. Within 72 hours, the management company demanded 3 months rent up front or eviction prep. They didn't have the cash to cover it. The walls closed in quietly. The overseas investor, who only stayed because of me, pulled out after I sold my last shares in the satellite company. It wasn't personal. He even emailed. I saw the writing on the wall. "You did the right thing." That night my cousin texted, the first contact since the wedding. "Whatever point you're making, it's made. You've torched everything." He was wrong. I didn't torch anything. I just stopped tending their garden. Then something unexpected happened. A woman from HR at a small accounting firm emailed, saying she couldn't speak officially but thought I'd want to see something. We met at a diner the next morning. She slid a folded paper and a screenshot from their onboarding system across the table. My sister had applied for a financial consultant job, listing herself as our company's managing director for 4 years, claiming client strategy, revenue growth, and operational oversight. Pure fiction. She'd used my name and number as a reference. I stared at the paper, then asked, "Did she interview?" The woman nodded. "Confident, too confident." I smiled. "Sounds about right." Leaving the diner, I texted my sister. "Never use my name again." No threats, no drama, just that. She didn't reply, but within an hour her LinkedIn vanished. Her accounts went private and mutual contacts stopped mentioning her. I wasn't angry or surprised, just done. By spring, the family business was gone. No bankruptcy, no headlines, just closed doors and disconnected phones. The website went offline overnight. A few clients might have wondered what happened, most didn't care. That's business. People think legacies are eternal, but they last only as long as someone maintains them. I let go. Alina and I moved to a new place. Nothing fancy, just bigger windows, more light, a kitchen she loved. She took on more creative projects, and I spent less time in spreadsheets and more on dinners with friends, long walks, and quiet moments. The lawsuit fizzled. Isabel dismantled it so fast I barely read their response. They tried to stall, but when they saw I wasn't bluffing and had every document, they backed off. No apologies, just silence. That was fine. They weren't good at apologies anyway. My dad sent one last gesture, a handwritten letter to my office, no return address or date. It rambled about the early days, driving to remote warehouses, building something from nothing. He said he missed those times and wanted to go back. Then he ended with, "I still think we were right to shield the family from outsiders." Even after it all fell apart, he saw Alina, the only person who stood by me, as a threat. I folded the letter, tossed it in the trash, and that was the last I thought of him. That summer, Alina and I took a road trip. No destination, just highways, music, and gas station coffee. We stopped at a lakeside cabin in Colorado. No cell service, no emails, no expectations. One night, sitting on the dock with our feet in the water, she asked, "Will you ever talk to them again?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "They already said goodbye. They just didn't know it." The truth is, when they chose that beach over my wedding, they gave me the cleanest break possible, wrapped in the ugliest package. I unwrapped it, used it, and never looked back. Over a year later, there's no contact, no updates, just distance. I thought that was the end. A clean cut, just Alina and me building a quiet life from the ruins of what that family was. But something lingered. It started with an email, not from them, but from Julian Heller, an associate at a Boston law firm managing a private trust from my grandfather's estate. My grandfather was the only one in my dad's family who ever made me feel valued. He died a decade ago, and I thought his wealth went straight to my parents. I was wrong. Julian said certain assets were locked in a secondary trust until my 35th birthday, part of a contingency plan after a falling out with my dad. I had no clue. For the documents, if I was no longer tied to the family business and had cut financial ties by a specific date, I'd inherit the whole trust. And here I was, clean, detached, and just 35. I sent the details to Isabel, who verified it within a week. It wasn't just money, properties, stocks, even a storage unit with artwork I didn't know we owned. One afternoon, I stood in that warehouse, staring at a painting worth more than my first apartment, realizing how little I knew about my own history, what my grandfather foresaw, and what he protected me from. When I told Alina, she cried, not for the money, but because, for once, someone from that family had done something for us, not against us. The trust came with a typed letter, signed with my grandfather's initials. "If they ever choose themselves over you, walk away and don't look back. I'll be waiting on the other side." I didn't know how much I needed those words until I read them. Now Alina and I are building something new. Not revenge, not a legacy, just a future. One rooted not in their rules or expectations, but in what they never understood. Quiet loyalty, real love, and the power of walking away. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Stay tuned for more real-life stories, get more experiences.